Amie Harwick spent her last night alive on February 14th, 2020, Valentine's Day, attending a burlesque show with friends in Los Angeles. One of those friends was Miss Tosh, who was a performer in the show. Miss Tosh would have no idea that this picture from that night would be Harwick's last. Miss Tosh joins us now live. Thanks so much for being here. You
Hi
saw
there.
Amie the night she died. She came to see your show. What do you remember about that night?
You know, Amie and I spoke before the show about things like, what time to arrive and all this, but we really spoke about how Valentine's Day is a day that can be also celebrated by friends and sisterhood. So we decided to have her come to the show with her best friends to celebrate what they called Galentine's Day. We all had such a wonderful time together. Of course, me looking at Amie from the stage, and then afterwards we met and took this photo. I recall, asking Amie to attend my after party with me, and she's stating that she was, tired, wanted to do something the next day, and that she'd see me again. And then, of course, we lost her that night.
Had she ever told you that she was having problems with Gareth Pursehouse, that she had run into him on at that red carpet event just a month prior, and that he had appeared very frightening to her?
She did not mention that evening to me, and not that night at the show either.
There is testimony that Pursehouse had broken into her home, had hacked her computer, had stalked her. Did you know any of this about this previous relationship that had been, by all accounts, quite turbulent?
Amie never discussed her relationships with me. Our relationship was very rooted in things that we found uplifting, and like, we loved cats, we loved social activism, we talked about human rights and supporting women in our community. She never really disposed any information about Gareth to me personally.
I'm just curious, as somebody who was close to her and clearly respected and loved her, and you just mentioned that she was very, very active in human rights. She was a trained, licensed therapist, and yet she had to take out 2 orders of protection against this man. If it can I
Yes.
mean, it's an really upsetting thing to learn, I imagine.
It's very upsetting, and being a woman in this world, it's very scary to think, how do we protect ourselves in these moments, right? I myself have experienced stalkers, and so to know that our dear friend, who is somebody that always we turn to for help, could be a victim of this.
Yeah, it's really something. I interviewed last night on this show. I interviewed an expert on stalking, and she said that if a therapist who could clearly recognize the signs of danger, the warning signs, and even in that email that she wrote to herself, she talks about Gareth looking, quote, dysregulated. Like, you could see her in the email she wrote to herself that was read out loud in court today, talking both about how terrified she was, but also in a very clinical sense. His eyes were unfocused, that he seemed dysregulated. I guess what it gets to the heart of, and what this expert in stalking told me last night, was that even somebody like her, who is clinically trained to recognize these signs of stalking, could end up the victim of a stalker, needing to get 2 temporary restraining orders, and obviously now the allegation that he killed her in her own home.
Yeah, and it's a very scary reality, that how much do these restraining orders protect victims of stalking and domestic violence?
I'm curious, she was described by one of her friends as a once-in-a-lifetime friend. What do you want people to know about Amie?
Amie, I completely agree. Amie is such an intelligent, empathetic, and compassionate woman. She dedicated so much of her life to helping people, helping women, and especially my community, the LGBTQ community. We always opened Amie into our events, our social spaces, our community environments, with open arms, and she just was never judgmental, always completely loving and supportive. she really had a lot ahead of her. She had a lot of great work to do.
Miss Tosh, thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate you. Thanks so much for watching. Go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.